The Wild West wasn't just cowboy duels and saloon brawls. It had some dark, shocking secrets too. From outlaw scams to bizarre laws, get ready for the wild side of the Wild West. Bugs were a big problem. In the Old West, people slept on beds made of straw and hay instead of comfortable mattresses. Although these beds were better than sleeping on the bare ground, they were not washed often, so they quickly became dirty. This created a perfect home for all kinds of bugs. Insects such as lice and bed bugs thrived in these unclean conditions, making sleep a constant battle against pests. In addition to the bugs in their bedding, people also had to face mosquitoes that were everywhere. Because buildings and shelters were not built to keep out insects, mosquitoes could easily fly in and multiply. These tiny creatures not only caused annoying bites, but they could also carry diseases. Even more upsetting was the fact that insects sometimes found their way into food supplies. They would lay eggs in the food, and when people ate it, they could be met with unpleasant surprises. This constant struggle with bugs made everyday life much harder and added to the challenges of living on the frontier. Women were cleaner than men. Life in the Wild West was very challenging, especially when it came to staying clean. Many people did not have access to modern cleaning products like soap or safe, clean water. As a result, it was common for men to wear the same dirty clothes for days and to skip bathing altogether. They often ended up covered in dust and grime, which increased their risk of getting sick. In contrast, women took hygiene very seriously, despite the tough conditions. They became very resourceful and found creative ways to keep their homes and themselves as clean as possible. Women often used local herbs and plants, which had natural germ-killing properties, to clean their surroundings and help keep diseases at bay. They also made sure to boil water before using it for cooking or cleaning, which helped kill harmful germs. Their efforts not only made their homes more livable, but also played a crucial role in protecting their families from illnesses in an environment where disease was always a threat. Soap, alternative cleaners, and hygiene. Hygiene in the Wild West was very different from what we experience today. Instead of the soft, fragrant soap used in modern bathrooms, people often turned to natural and homemade cleaning agents. For washing their hair, some used soapweed or the yucca plant, which produced a soft and shiny material. Others had to make do with soap made from animal fat, a rougher cleaner that often left their skin red and itchy. Although this made cleaning a daily challenge, it also had a surprising side effect. Overly clean skin was sometimes thought to allow germs to get in more easily. This mix of creativity and necessity meant that every part of personal hygiene, from hair washing to body cleaning, required its own unique solution. Dust storms and their impact on daily life. Dust storms were a natural hazard that could dramatically alter life in the Wild West. When these storms hit, rains would suddenly arrive, blanketing entire towns in thick layers of dust and dirt. This wasn't just a problem for cleaning up. The dust posed serious health risks. It increased the chance of developing pneumonia and other respiratory issues. A young girl from the 1860s, Sarah Raymond Hearn, remembered the dust as nearly knee-deep in some places, a reminder of how pervasive and hard to remove it could be. Even when people tried to sweep the dust away, it clung stubbornly to everything, especially on the faces of the boys who played outside. The relentless dust was a constant reminder that living on the frontier meant adapting to a harsh and ever-changing environment. Diseases spread quickly. Most cowboys were men who often gathered in crowded saloons, pubs, and brothels where people mingled closely without knowing how illnesses traveled. Because the science of germs was still in its early stages, no one really understood how diseases were transmitted. As a result, sexually transmitted infections became common in these close-knit environments. The lack of protection, proper medical care, and awareness meant that when someone got infected, it could easily spread among the many men sharing the same spaces. In an era when even simple health measures were nearly impossible, love and romance carried dangerous risks. Every interaction in such cramped and unsanitary conditions could mean exposure to infections that sometimes led to long-term health problems. Creative hairstyling. Despite living in conditions that were far from clean, women in the Wild West were remarkably inventive when it came to taking care of their hair. With limited access to modern hair care products, they turned to nature and ingenuity to maintain their appearance. Some women used soapweed, a wild plant known for its natural cleaning properties, to wash their hair, resulting in a soft, natural lather. Others found that mixing whiskey with castor oil created an effective cleanser that not only cleaned, but also added a pleasant scent to their locks. When it came to styling, resourcefulness shone through. To create curls, some women heated pencils and carefully twirled their hair around them, producing a look that was both unique and fashionable. Even amidst harsh living conditions and limited resources, these creative methods allowed women to express their individuality and maintain a sense of beauty in the rugged frontier. Wild West bars and social customs. Social life in the Wild West had its own unique style, even when it came to grabbing a drink. Unlike modern bars, Wild West saloons didn't offer chairs for sitting. Instead, the counter itself, often called the barhead, served as a place to rest afoot while enjoying a beverage. These saloons were very different from the comfortable chair-lined bars many people know today. The design of these establishments reflected the rugged lifestyle of the frontier, practical and built to serve the needs of people on the move. This setting also served as a social hub where people could share news, laugh over a drink, and temporarily forget about the hardships of frontier life. Poor dental care. Even though life was tough on the frontier, people still cared about their appearance. Dental care, however, was a major challenge because modern toothbrushes and toothpaste were rarely available. Instead of the products we use today, people relied on natural methods to clean their teeth. They often chewed on tough fibers like licorice root in an effort to scrape away food particles and plaque. Others used rough pieces of cloth as a makeshift toothbrush. Additionally, they mixed local plant extracts to create a kind of mouthwash that they believed could treat infections and ease tooth pain. Despite these inventive solutions, many people suffered from decaying teeth and holes in their teeth, and when dental pain became unbearable, some even used alcohol to numb the discomfort. Lack of bathing and fungal infections. Due to the harsh living conditions and limited access to clean water, cowboys and farmers often went long stretches without a proper bath. It wasn't unusual for someone to go weeks or even months without washing when water was scarce. This infrequent bathing led to a serious buildup of sweat, dirt, and grime on the skin, creating a perfect environment for fungal infections. Farmers, who spent many hours outdoors and wore the same clothes for extended periods, frequently developed painful and itchy skin conditions. The constant scratching not only worsened the discomfort, but also spread germs around the body, turning the problem into a cycle that was hard to break. Spread of diseases in crowded towns. Frontier towns were often small and crowded, which made it very easy for diseases to spread quickly among the residents. Illnesses like smallpox, cholera, and tuberculosis were common in these tight-knit communities. Cholera was particularly dangerous because it spread rapidly through contaminated food and water. Both Native Americans and European settlers fell victim to these diseases since very few people had any natural immunity. Even towns that initially seemed healthy would soon face outbreaks, making it extremely challenging for any community to maintain a good standard of health. Cowboy smell and health risks. Cowboys spent most of their time riding horses and moving from one place to another, and the strong smell of horses inevitably clung to them. This odor became a symbol of the rugged, daring lifestyle of the West. However, it was also a sign of the poor hygiene that many endured. The buildup of dirt, sweat, and grime on their bodies was not only unpleasant, but also a serious health hazard. The infrequent bathing and constant exposure to animals significantly increased their risk of falling ill. Working in such unsanitary conditions meant that cowboys faced daily health risks, in addition to the dangers of robbery or other physical threats. Beauty standards and skin color. Beauty in the Wild West was viewed very differently from today's standards. While a suntan is often seen as attractive now, having clear, pale skin was considered the ideal back then, especially among upper-class women. These women went to great lengths to protect their skin from the sun by staying indoors or wearing protective clothing, such as hats, gloves, and long sleeves. Some even used bleaching agents to maintain their pale complexion, believing that flawless, light skin was a sign of wealth and beauty. On the other hand, there were women who chose to embrace the outdoors, living as cowgirls and accepting the natural tan that came from spending long hours in the sun, thereby marking their own style in the wilderness. The importance of clean water. Clean water was hard to find on the frontier, yet it was vital for survival since water makes up about 60% of an adult's body. The difficulty in obtaining clean water meant that people had to be very cautious about how they used it. They often resorted to boiling water to make it safe for drinking and cooking. This struggle for clean water not only affected daily life, but also contributed to the rapid spread of diseases. Without reliable access to water that was free of germs, maintaining hygiene became a constant challenge in the harsh and unforgiving environment of the Wild West. Clean water. Challenges on the frontier. People in the Wild West often struggled to find clean water when they needed it. Even though there was water around, it wasn't easy to tell what was safe to drink. Dirty water sometimes looked just like clean water. For example, a leaking house could let contaminated water mix with a nearby stream. In addition, water that sat still wasn't safe because it became a breeding ground for insects. Often, these still pools even ended up on paths where horses trotted. The best solution was to collect rainwater in a storage tank, but even that water didn't last long before it became too dirty or scarce. The importance of the kerchief in frontier life. In the Wild West, the kerchief was not simply a piece of clothing for fun or style. It was a vital tool for daily survival. Cowboys and settlers relied on this simple, red, triangle-shaped piece of cloth to protect themselves from the harsh conditions of the frontier. The kerchief acted as a shield, keeping dust and dirt from getting into their noses and mouths, while also guarding their skin against the intense sun and biting cold. Because the environment was so unforgiving, a good kerchief could make a big difference in everyday life. It wasn't just about looking good, it was about staying healthy and comfortable. People chose their kerchiefs carefully, considering the quality and durability of the fabric. In an era when every piece of gear had to serve multiple purposes, the kerchief was a practical, essential item that combined both protection and a bit of personal style. The life of a saloon girl. The role of a saloon girl in the Wild West was often misunderstood. While some people might assume they lived lives similar to prostitutes, many of these women had very different experiences, especially in places like California, where prostitution was more common. In saloons filled mostly with men, these women provided much-needed entertainment by dancing, singing, and engaging in friendly conversation. Their presence encouraged cowboys and travelers to spend extra money on drinks and gambling, making them valuable to saloon owners. However, while saloon girls enjoyed a certain level of respect for their charm and ability to lift spirits, their lives were not without danger. The Wild West was a rough and unpredictable place, and not all men treated these women kindly. Many carried knives or small guns for self-defense, knowing that an ordinary night could quickly turn violent. Despite these risks, saloon girls played an important role in frontier society, offering moments of joy in an otherwise harsh and lonely world. Drinking clubs and bar culture. Entering a drinking club in the Wild West was expensive, and there were few ways to entertain oneself outside of the saloon. Without ice rinks, movie theaters, or shopping malls, cowboys often gathered at bars to drink heavily. These bars became the central social hubs where fortunes were won and lost in a single night. Popular drinks included a fiery whiskey known as firewater, made with ingredients like chewing tobacco, alcohol, and burnt sugar, and even set on fire to highlight its strength. Another favorite was cactus wine, created by mixing tequila with a local spirit. Both drinks were potent enough to spark frequent bar fights, sometimes with deadly consequences. Food and cooking on the frontier. Despite the rough habits and challenging lifestyle, the food in the Wild West could be surprisingly good. The quality of meals depended heavily on the season and local climate. Fresh ingredients were often sourced from native plants and animals such as rabbits and buffalo. Although dried staples like flour, beans, and sugar were harder to come by, people learned to make the most of them. Cooking was done using simple tools like Dutch ovens, frying pans, and cooking pots. As towns grew, so did the variety of recipes and available cooking equipment, which helped improve the overall quality and diversity of the food. Tobacco chewing and spitting habits. Chewing tobacco was more than just a bad habit in the Wild West. It was a necessity for many men enduring long hours in dry, dusty conditions. Cowboys, farmers, and lawmen alike used tobacco to keep their mouths from drying out while working under the harsh sun. But the act of chewing came with an unpleasant side effect: excessive saliva. When they could no longer hold it in, men would spit it out, often wherever they stood. Saloons, in particular, became notorious for their sticky, spit-covered floors. Bar owners attempted to control the mess by spreading sawdust on the ground, which absorbed the tobacco juice but also created a breeding ground for bacteria. The mixture of spit and sawdust not only made saloons even filthier, but also contributed to the spread of disease. Though it was seen as a normal part of life in the Wild West, the constant spitting added another layer of grime to an already rough and rugged world. Entertainment beyond the saloon. While saloons were a popular destination for drinking, many people in the Wild West also enjoyed live shows for a change of pace. One of the most famous was the Buffalo Bills Wild West Show, which toured the United States and even attracted audiences in Europe. This traveling show featured performers who were former Pony Express riders, fighters, and buffalo shooters, individuals whose skills and daring captured the spirit of frontier life. These shows provided a form of entertainment that brought people together and showcased the best aspects of the Wild West. The breakdown of law and order. The term Wild West originated during a time when law and order began to break down. Pioneers who left the East with big dreams ventured further west, unaware of the hardships that lay ahead. Early on, Native Americans fiercely resisted the encroachment of settlers, leading to violent conflicts and protests to protect their land. As more cowboys and settlers began to break the law and ignore established rules, the region became notorious for its unruly behavior. This struggle for land and control intensified during the American Indian Wars, marking a turbulent period in the history of the frontier. Pictures used to enforce law and order. In the lawless towns of the Wild West, where sheriffs were often outnumbered and criminals roamed freely, law and order were difficult to maintain. To deter outlaws, authorities and bounty hunters used a grim but effective method: photographs of the dead. When a notorious criminal was caught and executed or killed in a gunfight, their body was often propped up against a wall or laid out for public display. A photographer would then capture the image, ensuring there was undeniable proof of the outlaw's fate. These eerie photos weren't just for records. They were often passed around town as a warning to others who might consider breaking the law. Bounty hunters also relied on these photographs as evidence when claiming rewards. With law enforcement stretched thin across vast, lawless territories, such proof was essential in verifying that a wanted man had truly met his end. In an era where words could be disputed and witnesses could disappear, a picture was the most undeniable form of proof. The remarkable story of Lola Montez, born Eliza Rosanna Gilbert in Ireland, was one of the most captivating figures of the 19th century. She was not just an entertainer, but also a woman who defied societal norms and carved out an extraordinary path for herself. In the 1850s, during the height of the gold rush, Lola traveled across various towns, performing provocative and mesmerizing dances that left audiences spellbound. Unlike typical entertainers of her time, she embraced controversy, using her beauty, wit, and daring persona to command attention wherever she went. Her performances weren't just about entertainment. They were statements of independence and rebellion against Victorian constraints. Lola's life was filled with dramatic twists, from scandalous love affairs with European nobility to her influence on powerful figures like King Ludwig I of Bavaria, who was so captivated by her charm that he made her a countess. However, her fiery nature often led to trouble, forcing her to move from one place to another, reinventing herself each time. Her story is one of passion, adventure, and defiance, a tale so rich in drama that it could fill an entire book. Even today, she remains a fascinating historical figure, a woman who lived life on her own terms in an era that tried to restrain her. Capturing the other side, Victorian brothel photographs. The Victorian era is often remembered for its strict social codes, rigid morality, and structured class system. However, beneath the surface of its refined society lay a hidden world that few dared to acknowledge: the red light districts and brothels of London. Photographs taken in these establishments provided a rare and often haunting glimpse into the lives of prostitutes who operated in an era of repression and secrecy. These images captured the stark contrast between the elegance of Victorian fashion and the grim reality of life in the brothels. Unlike the carefully posed portraits of the upper class, these photos documented a world where survival often depended on navigating the shadows of society. Beyond their historical significance, these photographs served multiple purposes. For some, they were scandalous souvenirs, while for others, they acted as cautionary tales highlighting the dangers and struggles faced by women trapped in the sex trade. Today, they remain powerful reminders of a past where morality and hypocrisy often walked hand in hand. The Wild West was a world of grit, survival, and unexpected stories that shaped history. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more amazing content.